Hello everyone and welcome to another top 5 records video. Today it's record store day, and in these videos I am going to talk about the records that I bought because there are some very exciting releases. And in this video I'm going to be talking about The Dark Side of the Moon Redux live by Roger Waters. Now, what makes this an interesting record store day release? First of all, it is Dark Side of the Moon. Dark Side of the Moon, one of the best albums ever. That is always interesting. Another interesting thing is this is one of the most exclusive releases of today, with only 2,000 copies, which I find very tough to understand since it's Dark Side of the Moon. Dark Side of the Moon is always up in the charts now. Perhaps it has to do something with the fact that the Redux version, which Roger Waters released in studio form, in an album form, about 1.5 years ago, was not that well received. Nevertheless, the title, Dark Side of the Moon, it sells. So to make this exclusive is rather interesting. Also, a lot of things are interesting about this release. This was by far the cheapest album that I bought today. I bought it for 30 euros, whereas other standalone single disc releases went for about 45 euros. Much less big titles. Also, um, they did a great job on the packaging here. Check out hype sticker. I think the artwork is very interesting. Um, the big pyramid of Dark Side of the Moon, and there under you see Roger Waters in a pink costume performing a record whose original packaging, at least the Redux packaging, is completely black. That combination, black, pink, is interesting, and it goes further on this release. So here we have beautiful inner sleeve with pictures. I love this picture of Roger Waters. Also here, good picture. Not all these releases, these record store day releases, get um, photographed inner sleeves. They went there, and they went even further. Check out pink see-through vinyl. Now, if they take so much care for a release, nothing could go wrong. Or can it? I was very interested in this because my review of the Roger Waters Dark Side of the Moon Redux, you can see it on my channel, is not positive. I felt that Waters' initial claim to make the Redux of Dark Side of the Moon was that he felt he wanted to that he always wanted to make his own version the way he always intended to. And when you're listening to it, what he intends is to leave out everything that was added by David Gilmour, by Nick Mason, by Richard Wright. Their ideas, just beyond the capacities of their playing, their ideas, the melodies they come up with. I mean, these songs were written by Roger Waters, but the melodies, the way they build things in the studio, I find it hard to understand why Roger Waters ever thought that he could do the record without them. Also, all the ideas by someone like the producer or the engineer, I believe Alan Parsons did it. A masterpiece like that, Dark Side of the Moon, a record that sold so many millions that is still in the charts. I think it is wise to embrace the idea that although you are main vocalist, perhaps writer of the music of the lyrics, when you make something that big, you can never have done it just by yourself. And I think that Roger Waters during the two shows he did with Dark Side of the Moon Redux in London, right after the release, he must have noticed on stage during this recording that he did not fully comprehend the greatness of his record and the value of the others. He is leaving so much out there. Not alone the speed, because the tempo of the way this version is going, Dark Side of the Moon is even getting boring. He is sucking the soul out of there, and he tries to put new soul in there with added, yeah, I can't even call it lyrics. It's a sort of poetry. He speaks poetry. He tries to add narratives there. So what we're basically listening to in between songs is, and even on this live version, is a lot of Roger Waters talking. Now, one can imagine that if the record Dark Side of the Moon had its natural flow and you'd had some context or extra conversation or stories in between, something might work. But what he's actually doing here on all the songs that on the original version have speed and a lot of melody is also toning that down to this talkative mood. Roger Waters on this record is talking you through Dark Side of the Moon. And not even, I mean, that doesn't even sound as horrible as it actually is, because if you'd make a video, a 40 or 50-minute video of Roger Waters talking you through Dark Side of the Moon and about the ideas, about the recording process, I'd watch it and I'd enjoy that a lot more than what he is doing here. Now, I can't say the performance is technically bad. It is just based on a very bad idea of that Redux. And that is quite a hard listen. Now, why did I buy it? Because I know the studio version is not my taste. I bought it because I thought doing it live, he might add something, a different dynamic, a different vibe, a different understanding. As a matter of fact, 20 years ago, I saw Roger Waters perform Dark Side of the Moon live in its original version, but with his own band. And it was a stunning performance. I've seen him perform songs from Dark Side of the Moon many, many times. So I just couldn't leave this for what it was, because I hoped that doing it live or reinterpreting what he was doing live might add something, that it would make it more exciting. None of that is actually happening on this live record. And isn't it a pity? Because there's so much to work with and it just doesn't add up. Now, I have been talking enthusiastic about the artwork and the packaging of this release, but I have to give another downside comment. Although I do understand that they pressed this on a single disc, because yeah, the original Dark Side of the Moon is on a single disc and the studio version is on a double disc. I'm taking a look at the stampers if I'm seeing anything interesting to remark. No. I do understand that. However, this version is so much slower and they pressed so much music on each side that the dynamics of it are not that fabulous. Not a lot of things are wrong with the detail. The sound quality overall, this is good silent vinyl, but it's pressed at a very soft volume, and the volume dynamics are not that interesting. I'm pretty let down by this release. And it brings me back to my main question with regard to Pink Floyd. When are we gonna see these fresh, new releases of unreleased live albums. Luckily, we are getting Pompeii in 2 or 3 weeks, and I've already pre-ordered that because I want to have that on vinyl. It hasn't been released on vinyl. I have the DVD. What I want, what I love, is good records from soundboard recordings, from something like the Wish You Were Here tour. Is there a soundboard recording from Animals? I know there are soundboard recordings from the Wall tour. Give me anything from soundboard that hasn't been released, because it was such a beautiful period. And stop all the releases of these solo live tours, because your true power, for all the band members, the true power is in being together. So I'm curious, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Leave a comment below. I'd like to see you in another video. Bye.